Hey, welcome back to Relationscapes. I'm Blair Hodges, an independent journalist in Salt Lake City. It's nice to be with you again on another mini episode. Okay, if you're looking for another podcast to binge right now, I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is there's an amazing new show. It's called Everybody Knows But Me, which I highly recommend. You might have even already heard of it. The bad news is you can't really do a full-blown binge yet because they've only released 4 episodes so far. But the creator of this podcast is Holly Brown, and she's a marketing specialist with Tink Media. She's also a stand-up comedian, and her podcast is kind of blowing my mind right now. I'll read you the description, and then we'll dive right in with Holly Brown. Okay, when she was just 17, Holly Brown's dad was dying of cancer. It looked like life couldn't get more traumatic until her dad dropped a bombshell. Or 2 bombshells, really. Twin brothers that her entire family kept secret. Holly was the only one who didn't know they existed. After his death left her with more questions than answers, Holly sets out to uncover how a secret this big could be hidden, and why the sitcoms that raised her were often the only way to make sense of a life stranger than TV. Holly Brown joins us to talk about Everybody Knows But Me. Holly Brown, welcome to Relationscapes.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Blair. I'm so excited.
I'm going to start off with like a little bit of trivia.
Okay.
About sitcoms. You love sitcoms.
Love is an understatement.
Yeah. Your new podcast is like built around your love of sitcoms. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if you know the first TV sitcom. That's your first question. If you know the first TV sitcom. Oh. I did not know this. I had to look this up.
Gosh.
It was in 1947. This is the first TV sitcom. It's called Mary Kay and Johnny. So,
never.
Obviously not a hit, right? But like good enough to continue the genre. Okay, so I'm going to go through the decades and see if you can name a sitcom from each of the decades.
Okay, right? We'll see how oriented I am for the decades because I feel like I know them, but I don't know where to place them all the time.
All right, 1950s. What do you think?
I mean, Leave It to Beaver comes to mind.
Okay, Leave It to Beaver.
But I also, would we consider Andy Griffith's show a sitcom?
That's a little bit later.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I think it's...
That's a little bit later. So the 50s, I Love Lucy was the main one in the 50s.
Yeah.
The 50s is I Love Lucy. That was your top sitcom. In the 60s...
I already said the Andy Griffith show, so I'm going to lean on Andy that Griffith. One, because if it's not the 50s, it's got to be the 60s.
The top one in the 60s was the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Oh, right.
And I don't think I've ever seen an episode of that.
You know, some reason, that era of when all the shows were named after the lead actors of the show, I think my brain separates them sometimes as like, sitcoms is less, it's like, oh, this is their life. And I'm like, nope, whoop, that's a sitcom. It was just their name, their actual name, but fictionalized life,
Yes. Into the 70s. What have you got?
I'm going to say Happy Days.
Okay.
I'm going to also say Mary Tyler Moore show.
Yes.
Because we're on
Mary
this
Tyler
theme.
Moore. Yes. Another one, late 70s, was MASH.
MASH. Wow. Okay.
This is when MASH came out. And I never watched MASH.
Neither did I. And I feel like we really missed a huge cultural moment, Blair.
As soon as the theme song came on, I was like, change the channel. This is a really sad show.
Yes. And also, I think it was a really sad show.
I didn't give it a shot. All right. Into the 80s. Now we're getting
80s.
easier.
Got it. Okay. I'm going to do Family Ties, Who's the Boss?
Yeah, Who's the Boss is a late 80s one. You still haven't named the top one from the 80s, though.
Shoot, the top? Oh, the Cosby Show?
And you should know this. Okay, Cosby Show was top for like 5 years, so that's what...
And Cheers!
Yes,
Woo!
Cheers, and you have a connection to Cheers.
I do. Kelsey Grammer, huge presence in my life, whether he knows it or not.
And not because of his Sideshow Bob character. Yes, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Okay, into the 90s. What have you got for the 90s?
So the biggest show of the 90s has got to be Frasier. I mean, do I know that is the most watched show? But it was the most awarded show. So
I didn't know that.
Lean on Frasier for sure. Seinfeld, but even though that started in the late 80s, we've got Full House, we've got, Step by Step.
Yeah, all those TGIF
Family Matters.
shows are
Yeah,
in there.
I could. The list goes on. I could name one season shows too.
And then they got Friends and Fresh Prince was really big. Mm-hmm. And then into the 2000s, did you watch any sitcoms through the 2000s?
I mean, I absolutely did. Malcolm in the Middle, I think that one came out around in 99, but carried through the early 2000s.
Yeah, I think of that as more of a 2000s show.
Yeah, the intro alone is like guiding us, They Might Be Giant song, like guiding us into a different era.
Yeah.
But that portion for me was a little more driven by like I was watching syndication sitcoms from the 90s at that time, even though it was 2000s for me, but I was also watching shows very much catered to my age, like the Lizzie McGuire show at the time.
Okay.
Like more Disney-centric, those ones. I'm trying to think of, Friends was still so popular.
There wasn't a ton of like sitcoms with your classic like studio audience. So this is when shows like Arrested Development and Scrubs and The Office and Parks and Rec. But those are... Yes, okay, so How I Met Your Mother was more studio audience-y. And then Big Bang Theory, which I never watched.
Did you know, actually, Blair, How I Met Your Mother did not have a studio audience despite having a laugh track?
They just had the laugh track?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, we'll talk about that soon. I want to talk about laugh tracks in a minute. Look, so now we're in the 2010s. Does New Girl have a laugh track? I've never seen it.
Doesn't, but I think that was kind of a very, very distinct shift. We're in the era of, no laugh tracks, more...
Same for Brooklyn Nine-Nine into that.
Yeah.
And then we're up into the 2020s. Abbott Elementary is the top one, and I don't believe that doesn't have a laugh track either. That's more of like, I see that kind of in the vein of like Office, Parks and Rec.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, well, you did good. You did better than me. I had to look a lot of this stuff up. So, did you have a personal favorite of any of these sitcoms? Like
100%.
What one was your most favorite?
It's funny when your parent works on one, you feel like you have to say that one. And my dad would, growing up, be like, I remember him sending me off to school being like, tell all your friends to watch Frasier. Or like, tell all your friends' parents to watch Frasier.
If they get a call from the people at the Nielsen ratings, tell them it's Frasier.
But because there was always this weird, once it was, when it was still on, there was always like a slight weird unspoken rivalry of Seinfeld versus Frasier in my household. Because I never watched Seinfeld at all until I was an adult. But my personal favorite was Boy Meets World. Absolutely.
Okay.
By far.
So good, yeah.
It just spoke to me. It hit me at the exact perfect time.
Yeah, Boy Meets World's a classic. Yeah, that was our age. What year did you graduate high school?
2010.
Okay, so I'm a decade ahead of you, but Boy Meets World was right in the mix for me too.
It was. Yeah, and I like, we lived in this era of reruns, so like you could be watching a current episode of Boy Meets World in 99 or 2000, and you could be also at this, probably next week watch an episode of season 1 of Boy Meets World,
Yeah, exactly.
You got to experience it in a different way where it felt like you were watching an era of a show in your age, but you weren't.
Yeah.
But you still got to feel that way.
I'm wondering how you feel about sitcoms now, because I have to say, like, I'll watch classics and stuff, but if a new show were to come out with a laugh track, I can already tell that I wouldn't want to watch it. And I don't know if that's like snobbishness or what the deal is or anything, but a new show with a laugh track would probably be a no-go from the beginning for me, and I wonder how you feel about that.
I almost feel like we used to have sitcoms on all the channels. We had CBS, we had NBC sitcoms, we had ABC sitcoms, and then it became a thing where it felt like in the aughts, the only sitcoms with laugh tracks were on CBS, and they were all very similar type of sitcoms. Like Big Bang Theory, 2.5 Men, Mom, and that wasn't my lane. Like that lane of sitcom didn't speak to me as much as I would say like the NBC, ABC sitcoms did.
Yeah.
And then I just felt like when we kind of had a split of sitcoms with laugh tracks are going to cater towards audiences that like those shows that I might not have liked as much. And then sitcoms without laugh tracks catered more towards, okay, we're going to leave the laugh track and really lean into the smartness. So it was like the way Frasier really somehow geniusly towed the line of hyper intelligent, content, and anybody could laugh at it. I don't think we've hit that since. I felt like there was a fracture, and then it became two different audiences.
Yeah, like one of them's more for mass appeal. And I mean, sitcoms in general were situation comedy, right, is where that comes from. It's a set cast of characters who engage in their hijinks and stuff week after week. Things kind of reset every week. Sometimes there will be a plot that carries through multiple episodes, but not a whole bunch of character development. And it's not really thinky. It's kind of popcorn type TV, right? And I also think sitcom writers really went for mass appeal.
Yeah.
It had to be safe for advertisers. It had to be like a familiar formula. And I think that bumps up against complexity of kind of like real life. This is where it's so interesting with your podcast, where you're talking about your own life and you're kind of rebooting it as its own sitcom in the context of your show. Works so well because your family story has so much trauma in it, but then you're shoehorning it into this genre that it doesn't really fit in, and I think it hits even harder for that. You're using the genre of a sitcom. It's almost, I don't know if you meant to critique sitcoms, but I think your podcast does that.
I can't say that I didn't mean to critique them because I love them so much, but I do find the world so fascinating because, sitcoms couldn't exist without them taking the real archetypes in human life that we all experience and live every day. And if we're a cast of characters, which character are you in your life?
Yeah.
And then sitcoms just take that and simplify them even further so that they can play around a little more, so that everything's a little more low stakes, but it's all rooted in these real roles we all experience. So I just find that dichotomy fascinating of like, I can be relating to something on screen that is actually so unrelatable to my life.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, yeah, I'm just like this character who, failed his math test. Meanwhile, like my parents are, screaming behind me and the house is on fire and I'm the black sheep of my family.
Yes. There's an escapism to sitcoms too, right?
Totally.
Like they confront problems. Especially in the TGIF ones, the familiar narrative arc is somebody gets into some trouble. They get their comeuppance, and then in the end, you got Danny Tanner sitting on the bed talking to DJ. Hey, Deej, let's...
Yes.
So there's like escapism happening, but there's also this interesting morality tale thing that's happening as well. It's like escapist morality tales, which seems like that those two things wouldn't necessarily mix together, I guess.
Right. Yeah, that's a really interesting way to put it. Because like you said, they're, especially the TGIF ones, they were known for very special episodes. And sometimes those special episodes were so like, okay, it's sweeps week. We get it. Let's have Sean join a cult.
Yeah.
Or
let's have Punky Brewster's friend lock herself in a refrigerator.
Right. It's these insane premises. But because I think they could also do that. They could also dip their toe into these darker places because we trusted the show that it was going to wrap up in 22 minutes.
Yeah. Your podcast has got me thinking about all this, about like why the escapism of those sitcoms appealed to me, why it doesn't appeal to me as much anymore. Like I'd rather watch The Bear where they're like screaming at each other and which is also kind of terrible than some of these other shows. But also after the election this year, guess what I did? I binged the entire run of Who's the Boss.
Really?
And I couldn't watch The Pit because it was like, in my life, I needed Tony Danza at that moment,
Honestly, cut that line out, clip it, put that up somewhere. In my life, I needed Tony Danza.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I kind of felt my whole life was like, when I was in the middle of things, sometimes I would like I felt like I lived in two zones, which is what I'm trying to do with this podcast is like, I needed comedy to escape what was happening at home. I was obsessed with comedy because I like needed to laugh. And then sometimes you'd have those moments where you want to sit in your sadness and like almost acknowledge that it's real. Like, okay, I am trying to escape this all the time, but I need to remind myself this is really happening so that I can figure out what to do next. And so those were the moments. I lived in two worlds of sitcoms only, and then I would watch like the saddest movies like Magnolia on repeat. And I just felt fractured in that way of like, I needed comedy, but I sometimes needed real life. Just comedy a little more. Always comedy a little more.
And this is what your podcast does. So again, the podcast is called Everybody Knows But Me, and it tells your family's story. And the genre of the podcast is kind of a narrative show, like a story you might hear on This American Life, kind of telling story with music and sounds and stuff, even some investigative journalism because you're interviewing people and like finding some stuff out. But then it also includes clips from this fake sitcom that you all have produced that's about your family, as though your family was a sitcom, and it's complete with like the studio audience laughing at things, nonstop wisecracks. Like everybody has to have a wisecrack. Okay, I actually have a clip here. This is from your coming soon teaser, so this will help set up the show a little bit here.
After all, we kind of looked the part with all the tried and true archetypes. The wild child younger brother. The smarty pants older sister.
Technically, in Dante's Inferno, the deepest circle of hell is a frozen wasteland.
The quiet, collected mom.
Holly, would you please take that blowtorch away from your brother?
And then there was me, the middle child trying to hold everything together with jokes as some pretty aggressive problem solving.
Are we trading top ramen for tossed salad and scrambled eggs?
So this is wild. Like your family was the prototypical white American sitcom family.
I mean, we had mom, dad, very boisterous dad, kind mom, stay-at-home mom, older sister that fit like a very classic older sister archetype, myself as the middle child, and then the wild younger brother. And I think that's something I didn't touch on earlier about sitcoms is like people see what they want to see.
Yeah.
They know these roles exist, and so then they're just going to hope that people fill the roles because they get to see them all the time in sitcoms. And I thought I kind of had to self-analyze about my own family when I'm trying to understand, how people in my life didn't know certain things were going on. That's another lens that I helped understand that through, is because people see what they want to see. When you fit a role for people, that's really comforting to them.
I related hard because I'm also a middle child. So we're both like the middle children, which is the best in birth order. I think every study has proven that. People don't need to look it up. Just you can take my word for it. But I wondered how serious you were, though, when you're talking about, like, in the show, you're talking about feeling like your family's life was like a sitcom. Sometimes you say that almost literally, and that might be for effect in the show. Like, how big of an idea really was that for you at the time as a kid?
I think because of who my dad was, it felt really big for those years. The years in which, before I would say, like, the massive stuff started happening, my dad was this larger-than-life character. And he also worked on film sets and TV show sets, and then I would go to them. And so it's like seeing your dad interact with, say, George Clooney in real life. Your brain is like, yeah, he's just like that guy who plays an actor on a show. He was an actor, and before he worked behind the scenes, so it was just living in this world where anything was possible. You could wake up one day and my dad would take us on a scavenger hunt to look for a troll in the park that didn't exist. Or, he built these worlds that made sitcoms and Hollywood feel pretty close to home.
Yeah.
Both with his hands and with his mind.
Right. People that listen to the show will find out things start to spiral. There's a lot of verbal abuse in the home, alcoholism. He had this darker side, this more difficult side, and then he gets diagnosed with cancer. And how old were you when he was diagnosed?
I was around 12 when he got diagnosed.
Okay. I was 14 or 15 when my dad got diagnosed with brain cancer, which was terminal. Did you know at the time that it was a terminal? Did they present it to you as like, he's got terminal cancer?
They did. And, it's so different than I imagine what you experienced with that, because I listened to you talk about that on a previous episode. Certain cancers are aggressive and they come hard and fast, and it's brutal. And it's such a unique experience to have that go quickly. And then it's also a unique experience to have that prolonged, over years.
He lived for, was it 7 years?
Yeah, it was 7, almost 8 years after a stage 4 cancer diagnosis.
A year was pretty brutal.
I chalk it up sometimes to him being like, he had the best health insurance ever from working in TV. He really did. I just remember being like, damn.
Yeah.
Like, hey, my life's falling apart, but god damn, do we got good health insurance?
Yes, and at some point you're almost like, it almost becomes unreal. And I remember there was some times, even during that 1 year, that like the everyday life keeps going. This person's dying, but like, you're still going to school. There's so much that's still happening.
Yeah.
So I really related to that. And I was trying to wrap my head around experiencing that for years at a time rather than just 1 year of like, it almost starts to seem unreal that this person's going to die.
100%. I feel like by the third time a doctor tells you, like, you need to prepare yourself, he probably doesn't have much time left. I remember so viscerally feeling like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just be like, okay, somebody gonna tell this guy that my dad's invincible or what?
Yeah.
He had incredible health insurance. He also had a kind of cancer. He was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And obviously I can't speak to him now and really find out those nitty gritty details. It was like manageable for the beginning of if he had decided to pursue certain things like a colostomy bag. I think, and his ego prevented him from doing that. He tried, and then he just couldn't do it. And so it was like there were methods that helped prolong his life, though he always knew he was going to die. And that's just like what got us that extra time was like those little bits and pieces of methods. But he would kind of also just as quickly abandon them because his own ego was like, I don't want to carry this colostomy bag. I don't want to live like this. And I can't say what I would do in that situation, but it definitely, looking at the time, I was like, please do it.
Right. Get the bag.
Please
Like,
get the bag.
stick around. Also, didn't he kind of put off going into the doctor to
Yes.
begin with, too, because he was just so busy? So it's possible that there might have even been an earlier detection that could have helped as well.
Absolutely, I think so. You know, there were the major signs. There were huge signs. He avoided them. He was working on a film at the time. And so his brain was just like, during hiatus, I'll do it. During hiatus, I'll do it. And my dad was a very prideful man and a previously pretentious actor. And, you know, egos really do a lot to a person when it
Even
and
just
I
like
think,
masculinity stereotypes too,
Yes.
of like people that are like, I don't go to the doctor, I'm a man, you know? Like,
also I wonder sometimes if, because at this point my parents' marriage was dissolving and they were headed for divorce, things at home were really bad with abuse and addiction, and I think there's also, and this is something I can relate to at times, is like what I don't know, I just don't want to know right now. Like, even if it's what I think it could be, I'm just going to live in not knowing a little longer.
yeah.
And that can cost a lot, but I can understand why you might think that way.
The sad thing is that the cost is borne by so many more people than the person who's kind of postponing the payment, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Postponing the payment. That's good. That's a lyric right
Yeah.
there.
You got to pay the piper. Speaking of lyrics, your dad did music too. Some of the music on the show came from your dad.
All of the music that you hear in the end credits is my dad's original music. And, you know, like, it goes back to him being this larger than life guy and making these two worlds that I was able to move between, of like, why did life sometimes feel, when I was a kid, life felt amazing. It felt better.
Yeah.
It felt like what I saw on TV, which is the epitome of amazing. Because he would pull out a guitar. He was an incredible musician. He was self-taught. He could hear anything and then immediately go to the piano and start playing it. And like, that just feels magical growing up when that is at your disposal.
My dad played the piano. He was not self-taught. He was like classical pianist. He was incredible on the piano, but he could sit down at Christmas and just play all these Christmas songs and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I connected with that part of your relationship with your dad too. Your dad had some secrets as well. We can get spoilery here, and I think I'll just tell listeners right now, like, any spoiler we give right here does not really ruin what the show is doing. There are some big reveals in your podcast, but it's not built around revealing stuff.
Right.
So let's talk about what you ended up finding out after your dad got diagnosed with cancer. He drops a bomb on you.
Yeah. So my dad gets diagnosed with cancer when I was around 12, and it was stage 4. Lots of stuff was happening at home. My parents' marriage dissolving. My dad's my parents, there was a lot of addiction at home, a lot of bad stuff that comes with addiction. And things were not...
He had moved out and moved back in, right? Like, when he got sick, he's like, well...
He moved back in, I would say, like 1 to 2 years after his diagnosis. Basically when it was like, he can no longer work. We're going to need more... This is going to be more hands-on. And then jump to 5 years after that, almost 6, my dad, and I don't mind sharing this at all as a spoiler because it's in the description of the show. Like, my dad
that's right.
sits us down, and the tone felt very different of what he was saying. But my instinct was, despite all the other times we've been told he's going to die, this is the actual time he's telling us he's going to die. And then what came out of his mouth was that I had twin brothers who were 5 years old, and I was so relieved that he didn't say I'm dying in that moment, that I remembered that my instinct was to make him feel better and be like, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, thank God. Do you want to
are they in the attic or what?
Yeah. I was like, do you want to like say anything else to unburden yourself if it buys you a little more time? Like, did you evade your taxes? Anything?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like I would say, I don't know if it was a couple days or a few weeks later that it really sank in, finding out that not only did my dad hide these boys, which when I say hide these boys, it wasn't like
in the attic.
Yeah, it wasn't like hiding them in the attic. He just hid the fact of them from us, because he never met them. He was dying, so he chose not to meet them. It's all very complicated, and not only were they hidden, but everyone else in my whole family knew about it. like myself, my brother, and my sister were the last ones to find out.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone else had known from almost day one. And so it was just like when you have that, when you're already you're dealing with addiction and death, and you're 17, you can't handle all of that at once. So you start filing things away. You start being like,
Yeah.
bookmark for later, you know?
Well, it seemed like not having been told almost hit you harder than the fact that he had these other kids.
I think so. It did. I think in his mind, he's like, oh my God, no one's going to, my wife, my parents never ended up getting divorced because my dad was dying. But at the time, he's like, my wife is never going to like take me back or she's going to divorce me and take everything. And you live in these two zones of like, he's sitting there going, I can't say, I'm holding the secret because it's so big that I have other kids. It's so big. And I'm sitting there going, wow, how interesting that I could have dealt with that. I know I could have dealt with that. What I struggle to deal with is feeling yet again like I have zero control over my life but everyone else does. And, when people decide to keep a secret like that, I have complicated feelings about that itself. The betrayal that comes, whether or not somebody is intentionally wanting you to feel betrayed. But it's like, it felt way bigger that my cousins that were the same age as me knew about them than I did. Or that they lived 10 minutes down the street from my aunt in another state. Like those details felt so much more important than their existence. Because I'm like, I just like, if it just felt like too much to learn at once. And if you're able to just learn it at the time it's happening, I think sometimes it can aid in the processing of it all.
How do you think it would have been different if you found out after he died? Like that would have been a whole other thing, right? Like
I think it's hard to say 100%. I can't instinctively. I do think it might have changed a bit about my perception of him. Like, I'm thankful he told us when he was alive, because to find out something like that after someone dies, it just leaves so many question marks. And there was already question marks in my life.
Yeah.
So it would have left these gaping holes of question marks that I never would have been able to fill because he would be gone. But at least being able to find out when he was alive let me know he cares enough, even if it was too late in the game, even if his ego is still like keeping the secret for almost 6 years, he still like wanted to be the one that told us, even if he got pushed to do it, which I know he did. I think he got pushed to do it a bit by people.
Oh, interesting.
I think so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So he got pushed to do it. You don't. Is that going to be part of the show? I don't.
Yes, we're going to explore that a bit later.
Okay,
but
cool.
I also think another factor to that is like he was dying, and when death is involved and there are multiple children, that becomes complicated too.
Yeah, there were logistical reasons that.
Exactly.
I mean, and he had to have figured that you'd find out too. So maybe part of it too was like they're going to find out. Gosh,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if some of my relatives were like spending time with them, and it was probably only a matter of time until either one of my cousins my own age, or was like hey, and sent me a picture of them or something. Yeah. And so I'm sure I think it's just, that's what I like about doing this show is like sitcoms simplify things and they give you like A to B. There's a reason, there's a cause, and there's effect. But real life is like there are 1,000 details and things that make things so complicated. And so for my dad to hide this secret, it's not as simple as his ego. It's not as simple as he was dying. It's just there's so many other factors that make these things more complicated. And I personally need to know all those details, and then I can move on.
So it sounds like you wish he would have just told you kind of a lot sooner, is what it sounds like.
I do. Yeah, I can't. And you know what I will say? It's a lot of that is because it feels like to have your whole family hide something from you makes the thing feel more taboo.
Yeah.
That like you're now delayed in your own processing of something. And I was 17 and I was like, oh, okay. I wish that I don't even know how to process all of this right now. If my dad had just
Right.
sat me down and told me, hey, well, your mom and I are separated. You obviously knew we were going to get divorced.
Yeah.
I did this normal thing, which is have a relationship with somebody else. And it's like it makes more sense. But his fear of what would happen to say that out loud also made things more complicated than
Yeah.
like sometimes just the actual facts and reality are hard to say out loud, but less complicated than if you don't say them at all.
Did it give you time to ask him a ton of questions? Because as the episodes go on and people that listen will find out, you're still discovering things about what
Yeah.
was going on and what exactly happened. Did you get much of an opportunity to talk to him about it before he died?
Nope, not at all.
Hmm.
Not at all. I think that's another part of like when something becomes a secret, it makes you feel ill-prepared and to ask questions about it because you are still
Yeah.
sitting in the zone of like, I'm angry that people held this from me. I'm just trying to like learn all of this as my dad is dying and actually dying this time. And we didn't talk about it. Everything felt very fragile and my home life felt too fragile that I remember when I found out that information, so much had already happened before that moment that I genuinely would look around sometimes in life and be like, okay, all right, this last bit of information can't be real, right? Like, come on.
Yeah, it's sweeps week. This
Yes,
is
yes.
the ratings are down. Tony Danza needs to run for president or whatever the hell he did at the end of they really jumped the shark at the
I
end
forgot
last season,
about
by
that.
the way. But yeah,
You
not
know
president.
every
He ran for something.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So like that's the surrealness of
Right.
your life. You describe it. That's one of the sitcom elements. Is like these huge swings that you encountered, and yeah, wow, that's hard that you didn't get to confront him.
And there was a lot of other stuff happening, that I haven't touched on yet that listeners will hear.
Yeah.
Actually, they'll hear, I can probably say it, with my mom. Like,
yeah, let's talk about that because episode 3's out. The one where your mom gets to shine is what it's called.
yeah.
And I'll explain a little bit. We get more of your mom's backstory, and you had already covered so much drama and trauma in episode 2. I actually have a clip here.
Yeah, I did.
From this episode, from episode 3. I'll play this.
I have to be honest with you. This is one of the parts of my story I'm most scared to tell. Because my dad was the most undeniably likable man on what felt like planet Earth. He did tremendously bad things, but by the end of his life, with his illness and his secret finally out in the open, there was this reckoning. And with that reckoning came something else. Sympathy and a reminder of how easy it is to love someone when you know you're about to lose them, and especially when you finally do. My mom's story doesn't come with that same emotional arc, and I'm scared that when you hear certain things about her, you might not know how to feel. I didn't either. I spent most of my life not knowing how to feel about how I could love her so deeply and still live with what she did. So if you find yourself holding two conflicting truths about her at the same time, good. That means you're understanding her correctly.
Okay. What were you most afraid of to share about your mom?
So I introduce in episode 2 little nuggets of what my mom was doing at the same time that all this stuff was happening. Because we had my dad's addiction, what that meant for what that addiction played out in our home as far as abuse. And then we had the cancer, and then we had the twins. Like there was boom, boom, boom. We cover a lot in episode 2, and then by episode 3, I want to peel back the curtain and say like, hey, for a normal person, this would be enough. But what we haven't talked about yet is like, yes, I had this larger than life guy, but I also have a mom, and much like the sitcom worlds we watched, moms never get to be the main character. They hardly even get their own storylines that don't involve something incredibly sexist or cliche. And so I wanted to explore my mom's backstory because there was a whole other plot happening to that alongside everything else that was going on in my life that made it even more complicated when this giant secret came out. And that was that, I dropped these nuggets of my mom's addiction. And so we kind of see it play out where my dad's addiction is there. My mom's addiction is also starting to present itself, and just living in the world of two parents with addiction and sickness and death. It was just a lot of morbidity. And I was very nervous to tell my mom's story because I mentioned there, like, it's so easy when, so I almost said it's so easy. I don't want to minimize anything.
Sure. It's
It is-
easier, perhaps.
It's easier when somebody gets something that is so uncontrollable like cancer and there's an actual limit to their life. There is an
Yeah.
end point. We know it's coming to start the process of reconciliation and healing and wanting to end things on trying to control the ending of something. But when that isn't happening, when someone doesn't have this terminal diagnosis, but they do have this disease, it's and a very misunderstood disease at that, it just becomes a lot more complicated for the people living in it and the people observing it to find the love that is there. And so I love my parents, but I understand that everyone has their own different experiences with addiction and gratitude or forgiveness when it comes to things like that. And so I just wanted to like highlight the complicated nature of like conflicting diseases, really.
Yeah, and you're also thinking about public consumption of it too, because your dad's story kind of ends with this death, and you seem a little more protective of your mom, and you're also reflecting on what you say. It's hard to hold different truths about a person like that. And I imagine we can't expect everybody to do that, right? Like, not all listeners are going to find your mom sympathetic no matter how you spin it, especially people who maybe have their own connection to addiction or have their own trauma surrounding it. So holding up this story for public consumption is also a risk. And, I wondered how you navigated those feelings about like, okay, I'm going to be public about this stuff. This is airing dirty laundry, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. It's, frankly terrifying. It's frankly like your part of in doing this is like an effort to gain a slight sense of control over a life that I felt like I had zero control over, because I'm an adult now and I can handle these things. I can look at these things and talk to people in a different way than I could before. But with my mom, I love my mom, and I just want the listener to know that it is possible to experience like the lowest of lows and still come out of something with love. And also another thing about my mom's story versus my dad's story is my dad has this plethora, this overwhelming well of people that want to talk about him all the time.
Right.
And it's by nature of his personality, the way he operated in the world. He touched so many lives. He made everyone feel so special. He's just this giant man, cult of personality. And my mom didn't have that. And that's not because she wasn't great. It's just there's also varying circumstances there of like her own childhood. She was a very shy person. They were truly opposites attract in that sense. So it felt very important to me that while other people got to speak to my dad and about my dad and really help shape the kind of person he was, it's going to take the onus on myself and my siblings to really shape who my mom is, because she just naturally has a smaller family and a smaller circle. And so I felt like giving my mom even a little more time than my dad balanced out the bigness of who my dad was.
And throughout the show, you're talking to other family members, so they're bringing in their perspectives.
Yes.
Are you in touch with the twins?
That was another like huge motivating factor of doing this show, was like, okay, I'm an adult. I'm able to look back on all the things in my life and see where they led and understand better why decisions were made, why certain decisions were made. But one big decision that wasn't made yet was to meet them. And I didn't quite understand. Like, I was like, why am I so scared to meet them? And that's where this podcast even exists, was me trying to understand that and say, oh, I think it's because there's so many secrets that are not out in the open yet. And until everyone knows all these secrets, I don't think people will fully understand why I haven't met them. And so it's like getting myself to the process of meeting them, really. Like, that's what this podcast is doing. Is like, I want to get myself to a position of like, I can meet these people now because everything's out in the open, and I'm not entering the scenario that people are trying to push me into. People trying to push us to meet. I want to be in control of meeting them. I want to be able to talk honestly. A huge part of like not meeting them too was like, I don't know what version of my dad they had. I don't know. I've heard rumblings. I just for so long carried like, I don't know how to like pretend to these other kids that my dad was perfect or, that things were great. I needed to be in a position in life that I could be able to speak to both sides of that and be like, my dad was great and he was bad. And I couldn't do that before. And now I can. And so now it's like, all right, I'm here. Let's make this podcast is the giant Band-Aid that I'm ripping off, and in order to get myself to meet them. And I still don't know what their side of things are going to be. Like there's so much to learn still, but yeah, that's the goal is like,
wow. I can't wait to find out more. Some of your family gave you background but didn't want to be on the show. Was there any like weird differences in like how they wanted to be presented?
I think it really speaks to like what I'm saying about how careful I'm trying to be with my mom's family is my dad's family is so boisterous like he is. And they're absolutely, like you put a microphone in front of them and they're thriving. But with my mom's family, she grew up in a home that was so different. It was, the love looked a lot different. It was very muted and quiet. And I love my uncle and aunt, my mom's brother. She only has one sibling. And they didn't want to be on mic. And that's okay. Like, they're just so different. And because of that, I was like, all right, my dad's family kind of speaks for themselves when they're talking about my dad. My mom's doesn't so much, so I'm going to have to do a lot of that heavy lifting.
So you're not afraid that side of the family is going to launch a podcast to, the Expose on Holly Brown podcast or anything?
No. I mean, it also helps greatly that I have my siblings' support in all of this.
Yeah.
My brother and sister, like, they are so supportive of this. And I think for all of us, we've talked about it a lot. It's like, it's such an unburdening of like, you know what? Why are we hiding this? Why are we? There was so much of like, what did people know? Because we just didn't know. We didn't know what other people knew. When you grew up in such chaos, you assume other people can see it. And there's a lot of other factors.
And each of you have your own family kind of too. Like each sibling experiences the family very differently, even though you were all
very
there.
Differently. Yeah. Right. My siblings are just, it's so freeing to be able to talk about this stuff openly and finally put the missing pieces both together for ourselves of the questions we have and for our relatives to be like, to have to deliver some of this information to my relatives. Like, it's been hard, but knowing I have my siblings in my corner almost legitimizes everything I'm doing. It's like, Holly can't be lying because Casey's the, straight A student. Like, she wouldn't lie.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, truly, I couldn't be making this podcast without them because there is an element of like, oh, this is very real for three full people. This is like 100% what they experienced.
Well, I can't wait to hear more of it. How many total episodes are there in the show?
So what we're doing is the narrative portion of the show, which follows a similar narrative format to a lot of other beloved shows, is going to be around 10 episodes long.
Cool.
And we dive, not all of that is like pure revelation and stories. A lot of it is, there's a good amount of that's going to be self-reflection. There's a lot of real-time self-reflection that is happening here for my family. And so I'm going to be checking in with them, seeing how they feel. Obviously, we still have a lot to discuss when it comes to my journey of meeting my brothers. And then, because when I've talked about this to anybody in the past, when I've shared parts of my story, and the main part, of course, of this part being that my dad had this secret, I am like, it's like an instantaneous unlock for another person, the person sitting across from me, to be like, they look around and they're like, my uncle had a secret family. And then we get to just go into this journey that it's like, I don't know if I ever would have gotten to know this about you if I didn't share this. And so what we're doing is, once my story concludes, what I really want to do, because I found so much comfort and so much release of shame when I got to talk to other people about it, is we're gonna bring other stories on, and other people that are willing to share these very shockingly common experiences that we all don't talk about enough to know how common they are. So it's going to be transition into a little bit of a chat show, but we're keeping the through line of 90s going, where it's going to be very like 90s Ricky Lake, Sally Jesse Raphael chat show.
Yes.
I'm a comedian. I can't not lean into the absurd where I can. And I hope to bring some levity to these like really hard conversations that I think are important to share.
The show is called Everybody Knows But Me. Check it out wherever. I mean, people are listening to this podcast, so they can get it at the exact same place. Everybody Knows But Me. Holly Brown, it's such a great show. Thanks for talking to me about it.
Thanks, Blair. Thank you so much. I really appreciate, I love hearing your thoughts about the show too when you've been listening. It's such a joy to experience it alongside with the listener. So thank you. And thank you for having me on. This was a blast.
That's one of the best parts of podcasting is like when people have that, I want to hear what people think. That's what I want to hear. So
absolutely.
All right. See you, Holly.
Thanks, Blair.
That's it for this mini episode of Relationscapes. Go check out Everybody Knows But Me, and then come back and listen to some more episodes of Relationscapes. If you're enjoying this podcast, I hope you'll take a second to rate it and review it in Apple Podcasts. Here's a new rating that just came in. It's a 5-star review from Zucked Up. It says, Blair is one of the best interviewers in the podcast game. He approaches each guest and subject with curiosity, humility, and compassion. I end every episode with more understanding and knowledge. Thanks, Zucked Up. Thanks for you're too kind. I'll tell you what, Zucked Up, if you hear me now, and you haven't done this yet, recommend the show to some friends. Let's get some more people listening as well. If you want to see some video clips from this episode and some other bonus stuff, you can follow me on Instagram or TikTok. It's @_Relationscapes. Mates of State provides our theme music. I'm your host, Blair Hodges, an independent journalist in Salt Lake City, and I hope to spend more time with you soon here on Relationscapes.